welcome to High Voltage Adventures. Please subscribe. What's up, everybody? I'm really excited today because I'm on vacation for Christmas and I decided to do a little insulator hunting today. I'm going to look along this railroad line here in Georgia. The railroad line dates back to the 1840s, and I found insulators that date back all the way to the 1870s that they used along this railroad line on a telegraph line, and they used insulators on the poles all the way up to at least the 1970s or 80s for the railroad signals, and the telephone lines and telegraph, they were all on the same poles. So there's lots of different insulators to be found along this railroad track, but I'm looking for the early ones that date back to the 1870s and 1880s. So let's go see what we can find. Most of the old poles along this line were cut down about 20 years ago, but if you look hard enough, you can still find a handful that are still standing. This one has lots of vines growing over it, and it still has some beehives hiding there in the vines. I'll have to come back later and try to get them. At least a couple look like crown embossed Brookfield beehives from the 1880s. So those are cool to see still up there. Over the years, I've found hundreds of crown embossed Brookfield beehives along this line. Here's a pretty green one I found in Robinson, Georgia. I mostly found aqua ones, but it was nice to find this green example. Here you can see the patent dates, 1883 and 1884. I found this one with my grandfather, so it's special to me. And here's some beehives on a pole I took years ago. Let's see what we have here, guys. It's a beehive. Here's a nice teal green beehive I found in Barnett. These beehives date to the early 1900s into the 19-teens. There were thousands of them used along this railroad line over the years. Here's one with some nice amber swirling and dome glass that I found along the line years ago when the poles were still up. This is a dome portion of a CD-133 Brookfield. These were used and made during the 1870s and 1880s along the line. There was lots of variations I found over the years with the 55 Fulton and 45 Cliff Street address. They were always fun to find on the poles and in the ground. So here's one that has the 55 Fulton with the 3 patents on the back. And here's one I dug a few years ago. And here's one I found on a pole in Greensboro years ago This one has the 45 Cliff Street and January 25th, 1870 patent. This was taken in the 1960s in Decatur, Georgia. This picture was taken in Madison, Georgia, where the center of Georgia splits off from the Georgia Railroad. Dang it. CD-126. I found a few of these CD-126 Brookfield blob tops that date to the 1870s and 1880s along this railroad line. Here's one that still has the old iron telegraph wire and it's still covered with train soot. I love this one. It just has so much history attached to it, literally. And here's another one that still has the old iron wire still on it, and it's full of fizz and bubbles. I love these old timers that I found along the line years ago when the poles were still standing in Greensboro, Georgia. All that stuff is long gone now, sadly, but I had a good time while it lasted. These are Forrest Beckham photos from the Georgia Railroad album. This photo is in Thompson, Georgia in 1950. And this photo is in Camac, Georgia in 1950 also. This was in Thompson, Georgia in 1941. And this was taken in Bel Air, Georgia in 1941. This was in Camac, Georgia in 1975. And here's a picture of the Thompson Railroad Depot. Here's a picture of an ancient pole I took years ago. And here's another pole that was loaded with insulators along the railroad line. And this is what the railroad line looks like today. Still lots of old houses and buildings and nice scenery to look at, but it's sad the poles are gone. Just a handful remain. Here's one that still has some CD 154 and 155s that date from the 1920s, 30s, and 40s that were used for telephone and telegraph lines along the railroad line. This one's here in Rutledge, Georgia. And here's a CD 151 Brickfield I found along the line in the past. I found a few of these in different places. This beautiful green CD 152 Brookfield is loaded with fizz and milky swirls. These date to the 19-teens. I found it in Union Point, Georgia with my grandfather. I found a few others along the line also in that shade of green. And this is in Greensboro, Georgia. This is the old freight depot and railroad station. It's in pretty rough shape, but it's still standing. Imagine all the people who passed through this over the years. Maybe one day it'll get fixed up, hopefully. Here's a pole in Social Circle, Georgia with some straw CD 154 White Altatums. It's a top to a CD 127 Brookfield from the 1870s. I found a handful of CD 127 Brookfields along the railroad line. They're usually broken though, but here's a couple examples, including the one on the left that I found last year.
All right, guys, I think I found something good here. Oh, man. Freaking sweet. Patent December 19, 1871. All right. Too bad. It's broken now. Dang it. Man. That's what I'm here for, fellas. Just gotta find a hole now. 1871.
I have been lucky enough to find some hole bullets along the line over the years on poles and buried along the line. Well, here's the one I just dug up, all cleaned up. I love the strong embossing on it and the color. And it's a great old piece of history from the railroad line to add to my collection. I always enjoy insulator hunting along this line, and keep watching in the future for more insulator hunting and antique hunting videos. See you guys.